The assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moise continues to cause widespread speculation almost a month on from the incident. Now, though, the only known witness to the assassination itself has given a full account of the attack, in which she describes how the president's guards disappeared. Here's what you need to know. Martine Moise, the wife of assassinated Haitian President Jovenel Moise, has given her account of last month's attack, in which she was also seriously injured, notably telling CNN she believes presidential guards vacated their posts under orders from an unknown source. The Haitian First Lady says that minutes after hearing automatic weapons being fired outside, the bedroom door burst open and assassins began firing into the room. Initially, only she was hit, and while face down on the ground bleeding, she says around a dozen men ransacked the room, looking for something. "I heard them saying, 'That's not it. That's not it. There it is,' she said." After the assassins had found what they were looking for, Moise says they turned their attention to the president, with one of them making a phone call where they appeared to check that he was the correct target. Once they had done so, they shot him. Moise says that after the attack, it was a maid who found her, before a team from the National Police eventually arrived to take her away, first to a local hospital and then by plane to a Miami hospital with her children, according to CNN. However, she says that as she left her home that night, she noticed there were no guards stationed on the grounds, where usually there would have been dozens, and this led her to conclude that they received an order to leave. What happened in the immediate aftermath of the assassination now appears to be the only part of the story that is clear, with a CNN source describing how a group of up to 26 former Colombian soldiers and 2 Haitian Americans were initially allowed to leave the area around the president's private residence, before being met by a massive security services roadblock. The majority of this group then took refuge in an empty 2-story storefront, where security services waited them out until the next day. At this point, 2 of the president's guards allegedly held hostage were released, and the 2 Haitian Americans who say they were working as translators gave themselves up to the security services. Police then engaged some of the Colombians in a firefight, which saw 3 of them killed. However, the majority of the original group had already fled, including one group that made it to the nearby Taiwanese embassy. The next day, with police having surrounded the embassy, this group of 11 gave themselves up without more fighting. In the days that followed the attack, of those allegedly directly involved in the assassination, 18 Colombians were detained by Haitian security forces, 3 were killed, and 8 were still wanted. The 2 Haitian Americans were also arrested. However, Martine Moise was categorical in saying that these men were not the masterminds of the attack and that many questions remain unanswered. "The people that they arrested are the people who pulled the trigger," she told CNN. "They wouldn't pull the trigger with no orders. So the main characters that we need are the people who paid for that, and the people that gave the order." Haiti's National Police Chief, Leon Charles, announced last month that he had a major answer to that question. He said Haitian-American Christian Emmanuel Sanon, a 63-year-old doctor and pastor, was a central figure in the plot, according to the New York Times. Charles alleged that Sanon, who has been arrested, had hired the assassins via the Venezuelan security firm CTU, paying them to enter the country in order to kill President Moise so that he could install himself as president. However, the Times reports that this account in turn has been widely questioned. Sanon was not widely known before the accusations against him emerged. He filed for bankruptcy in 2013, and his apparent involvement does nothing to explain the startling failures in security which surround every element of the initial incident. On top of the apparent absence of presidential guards, Haiti expert Kevin Pina reported that police at a checkpoint near the president's house had allowed the assassins up to the house, having claimed to be from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. This was on the instructions of the Office of the Chief of Haiti's National Police, he said. The situation now is that, with investigations ongoing, CNN reports that at least 24 police officers are under investigation, according to Haiti Police Chief Leon Charles. 12 have been arrested, and 4 have been accused of working with the alleged Colombian mercenaries, according to National Police spokesperson Marie-Michelle Vernier. 2 men involved in running the president's security team have also been arrested so far, according to Reuters. Presidential Security Coordinator Jean Lugel Civil was arrested last Monday, following on from the earlier detention of another senior member of Moise's security detail, Dimitri Herard. This leaves a major amount of investigatory work to do, but there are good reasons why not many, including Martine Moise, seem to have a lot of faith in it. The New York Times reports that a judge and 2 court clerks who collected evidence for the investigation have had to go into hiding after receiving death threats, and that the requests for help from authorities were ignored. The 2 clerks also allege serious irregularities within the investigation. They say the police moved the bodies of those suspected of being assailants, took away some of the evidence, and denied them access to the crime scene for hours, in violation of Haiti's legal code. The same New York Times article also points out that more than 3 weeks after the incident, none of those arrested in connection with the assassination had been charged, which is against Haitian law and leaves the investigation vulnerable to legal challenges. This shocking murder has, to say the least, a lot left to unpack, and the investigation into it was always going to be difficult. But so far it has caused more questions than it has offered answers. The apparent confusion and atmosphere of doubt and distrust has only been enhanced by the fact that so far the Haitian National Police have not yet released CCTV footage from the night of the attack, according to CNN. Keep watching for a more detailed account of how the assassins were rounded up and the political background behind the case, including Haiti's colonial history and key political players who are now battling to control the country. Details of the chase and firefights between Haitian security forces and the alleged assassins of the country's president have begun to emerge. Here's what you need to know. The gunmen who assassinated Haiti's president around 1 a.m. on Wednesday, July 7th, were initially allowed to drive away from the president's house before being met by a massive security services roadblock, according to a report by CNN, citing a source with knowledge of the tracking operation. As the group's convoy of 5 cars containing up to 28 assassins arrived at the roadblock, they fled on foot. Some leaped into a deep roadside drainage canal, others scattered into surrounding buildings. The majority of the assassins took refuge in an empty 2-story storefront, which sheltered them from gunfire, and at this point, Haitian security forces decided to wait them out, knowing the humidity, heat, and a lack of drinking water would weaken them. At 3 p.m. the following day, Haitian forces threw 3 tear gas canisters into the road in front of the shop, and negotiations began via the phone of one of the guards held hostage shortly after. The result of those negotiations was that 2 of the president's guards held hostage were released, and that 2 Haitian Americans who say they were working as translators gave themselves up to the security services. Haitian security services later made their way inside the building, and a firefight ensued in which at least 3 Colombian gunmen were killed. However, the majority of the gunmen had already fled, including one group that had made it to the nearby Taiwanese embassy. The next day, with police having surrounded the embassy, this group of 11 gave themselves up without more fighting. In total, 26 former Colombian soldiers are suspected in the killing, according to the Associated Press. Of these, 23 have been arrested and 3 have been killed. 3 Haitians, including the 2 Haitian Americans who say they were translators, have also been arrested. The third Haitian is Christian Emmanuel Sanon, who Haiti's National Police Chief Leon Charles has said masterminded the assassination. Sanon is a doctor who had been living in Florida, according to the New York Times. However, according to the New York Times, much skepticism exists within the country around this official account. One anonymous associate of Sanon's has told the Associated Press that Sanon told him he was approached by people claiming to represent the U.S. State and Justice Departments, and they wanted to install him as president. The same source said the plan was for President Moise to be arrested rather than killed, and that Sanon would not have participated if he knew Moise would be assassinated. Alongside that discussion, there is also the question of the role of the guards around President Moise. The president's security detail was made up of about 10 men, according to El País, and none of them were injured in the attack, according to the Los Angeles Times. What's more, Colombia's national police chief, cited by the Associated Press, has said the head of general security at Haiti's National Palace flew to Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama in the months before the assassination. Colombian police are now investigating whether he had any role in recruiting the mercenaries, while in Haiti, prosecutors are seeking to interrogate Gerard over the assassination. All of these questions exist within the context of a wider political battle, which began well before the assassination of President Moise. A growing number of politicians have challenged interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph, who has taken charge of Haiti in the wake of the assassination, with backing from police and the military, according to the Associated Press. On Sunday, U.S. officials, including representatives from the U.S. Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, met with Joseph and designated Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who President Moise had appointed as his replacement just days before his death. Also at the meeting was Joseph Lambert, head of Haiti's dismantled Senate, whom supporters have named as provisional president, according to the White House National Security Council, cited by the Associated Press. Whoever takes power in the country will be faced with huge questions about the events of recent days, as well as questions about the future. Haiti's post-colonial period was summed up by The Guardian as a seemingly endless onslaught of economic strife, foreign intervention and exploitation, venal dictatorship, coups d'etats, corruption, and gang violence, as well as a succession of deadly natural disasters. Indeed, the Encyclopedia Britannica draws various lines between racial and financial disparity in the country today and those foreign interventions over the past 100 years. From 1915 to 1934, for instance, Haiti was occupied by U.S. Marines, and many Haitians believed they were sent to protect U.S. investments in the country as well as to establish a base to protect areas around the Panama Canal. Even now, according to Haiti expert Kevin Pina speaking to I-24 News, the matter of who comes out in charge of the country could effectively be decided by whoever gets U.S. backing. Interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph has, according to Pina's Flashpoint news site, long held ties to the U.S. intelligence community.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.